Hello everyone, this is Evan Abrams, and welcome to the first video of our look into audio in motion design. I know on this channel we usually focus on the visual aspects of motion design, visual effects, moving pixels around the screen, but often in motion design, what you hear is just as important as what you see. So in this video, we're going to look at some of the components of this extra dimension of design, how you might use them, what they're for, and what their purpose is. So much of design is about attention, and as you make the leap from static or graphic design into moving motion design, that's an extra layer of detail that you get to play with. Now when we start layering audio, that's like a fourth or fifth dimension depending on how you're counting. So I hope you enjoy this dive into this aspect of motion design brought to you by the good people at Soundstripe. Now it's a pretty smooth segue to talk about the people who've provided the audio for this series and have sponsored the whole run of it. Soundstripe is a subscription service with high quality curated royalty-free tracks available with perpetual licenses. Premium members also get to enjoy sound effects and stems to layer in more nuance to their mixes. Hundreds of new tracks are added every month, and their massive library is easy to search and filter to find exactly what you need to create exceptional content. Use the link in the description to start your free trial of Soundstripe today. Let's get started with a little example. What we hear shapes what we see in a very literal way. As you watch this loop, each time through, the audio will be different. Consider how you feel about what's happening each time. Our perception of what's going on changes just based on what sounds we hear. Especially in the absence of details, audio fills in the gaps to tell us what's happening. And this information doesn't need to be literal, it can be contextual. Maybe it's telling us how we should be feeling or what we should be paying attention to. For the rest of this video, let's talk about what components might go into your final mix for a piece. These are things like voiceover or dialogue, it's the music or the score, the ambiance or ambience, I guess, and sound effects. Voice provides literal information. Now, not all pieces use human voice, but if you're using vocal performances in something with a strong need for VO, where the audio is essential to the piece, here are some things to consider. First is tone. Is it going to be casual, authoritative, ironic, businesslike, old-time radio? What's the energy of the voice going to be? High energy and manic, or like low energy and chill? And the timing. How fast is something being read and at what cadence? And for our purposes in motion design, the speed is often very important. Not only how fast lines are being read, but also the space in between the lines. These gaps and runs form the beats that we need to either animate inside of or massage to fit with the animation. And there's a limit to what we can do about speeding up or slowing down audio in post and still have a natural, good feeling piece. Now, as much as voice can provide literal information, music often provides a lot of the emotional information. Here's the same animation, but with two different tracks put under it. It feels very different. But the only thing we've changed was the track that lays under the animation. In the absence of other cues, the music helps us know how to feel and evaluate the images that we're seeing. Music also has a tempo and a rhythm to it. So many beats per minute, a time signature. Music is made in patterns and repeating expected beats. So when you're working with music, just slapping any track on animation might not line up very well. If you're using a track in, say, 4/4 time, but your animation is on a very different time signature or has no real cadence to it at all, it doesn't look that good. These things need to be harmonized not only at the emotional level, but on that technical timing level as well. Music also creates synchronicity, the appearance that things line up and have meaning. Like if you listen to Pink Floyd's The Wall while watching The Wizard of Oz. Google that on your own. But when you use a music track in motion pieces, or even better, when you have the track scored for your pieces, the swells and dips, the changes and stops line up with your motion and compound your intention, ideally. If you want there to be more synchronicity in a piece, then you should select your music first and work to engineer the beats into your motion rather than hoping things will line up later. Let's talk a little bit about l'ambiance here. Ambience is more tonal information. Not everything needs music, obviously, but we can make something feel like we're in space just by layering in some engine thrum, maybe some strings and a theremin. Is that what that's called? These sounds make us feel like we're in space, when really this is just a circle and some triangles. The context of the scene is given meaning because of this ambient sound we're hearing. With a few changes, now the audience could perceive us as being underwater, when clearly nothing about the image has changed. It's really just that ambient sound that sets us in a place. Ambience can also free up a lot of resources when thinking about what we need to put into a scene. To show that there's a little birdie and he's hanging out in a forest, for example, we really only need to make the one character and a few objects to suggest the place, and the sounds fill in the rest of that information. We don't even need a background plate in here. That's the wonderful thing about ambient atmospheric sound. It adds so many layers of meaning to have just the right sounds happening that fill in the whole picture based on very little visual information. Now, similar to ambience is sound effects. Granted, the ambience of a scene is just made up of a bunch of sound effects, but individually, their purpose is to layer on these little pops, bleeps, clickety-clacks. It's to call attention to action. When we hear a sound, we search for the source of the sound. Oh, what made the sound? Where is it? Go get it. Sorry, my dog walked into the office there. But it's literally the same for humans. Something that is subtle or hard to see visually will stand out once we mark it, once we punctuate it with sound. It becomes important. It's getting layers of meaning ascribed to that action because we're calling it out with sound. Sound effects also invite the viewer to suppose something about what's happening. Here's just an object scaling up. And now maybe it feels like it's powering up. The motion is all the same, but what it means or how it feels is very different. You can even impact the velocity of something by just putting a faster sounding sound effect under it. Definitely something to keep in mind. When you can't change much about a piece visually, you can change how it feels sonically. A final concept I want to talk about is the difference between diegetic and non-diegetic sound. I wouldn't be doing service to my film studies courses if I didn't dump those words out here. Basically, we're talking about sound that is happening in the context of a scene, like this radio's playing a song and the other things in the scene can hear that and respond to it. Or is it sound that we, the audience, hears, but nothing else in the scene can hear? This is a big question when thinking about the role of sound in a piece. If these are sounds that other things in the scene can hear, then they should either be responding to them or animating in some way that indicates they're generating that sound. If those sounds are not being heard by things in the scene, then they don't need to be reacted to at all. These ideas can really help you when considering what sounds you're going to be injecting into a piece or layering on here.
One final thing before we move on, this video is really just a primer on sound design. You can go incredibly deep with this stuff, and there are people who dedicate their whole careers to just sound design. I'll recommend if you're on a project that has the budget, you should engage one of them, but maybe this will inspire you to go deeper into this avenue and become one yourself. In the next video of the series, we're going to talk about a workflow for dealing with audio-driven pieces. Sometimes you have to lock down the audio first and then animate to it. This is true for things like explainer videos, lyric videos, anything where the sound is so important that it cannot be changed that much moving into the piece. Thank you again to Soundstripe for sponsoring this series and providing all of the audio that you've heard throughout this video. Use the link in the description to enjoy your free trial. Use the link in the description to start enjoying Soundstripe in your own projects today. And thank you so much for watching, listening, and spending some time with me here on the EC Abrams tutorial channel. Make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications so you get all the latest tutorials right here coming into your feed. Goodbye for now, and I'll see you around the internet.